I tied my faded scarf around a stranger's bleeding arm on a crowded train, and he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Marry me." I laughed because what else do you do when the impossible lands in your lap? Then the doors blew open, men in black suits rushed in shouting, "Boss!" And I realized the man I'd just helped was the most feared name in the city. If it were you, what would you have done? My name is Olivia Robinson, and I didn't go looking for trouble. Trouble found me, sat down next to me, and asked for my hand. The day my life cracked open started years earlier in a classroom that smelled like chalk and nerves. 15 years old, small and quiet, just trying to be wallpaper, while the world outgrew me. The bell had barely stopped ringing when I realized I'd gotten my first period, and the stain on my skirt felt like a siren. Snickers, then whispers, then laughter rolling over me like a wave I couldn't outswim. You know that heat that climbs your neck and makes your eyes sting? Yeah, that. A chair scraped, a boy stood, the room fell quiet. He walked to me without a word, slipped off his school jacket, and tied it around my waist like it was the most normal thing in the world. Henry Wilson. Tall, in a gentle way, shy, the kind of kid who looked like he'd rather be a tree than the center of attention. The teacher stormed in, saw the wrong jacket on my body, lifted a cane like the past had never left. Before I could speak, he spoke. "It's mine, ma'am." I gave it to her. He took the punishment while I stood there wrapped in his kindness and shock. I went to thank him, but someone called him out of class, and the next day his seat was empty. They said he transferred. He was gone, and I kept the little crest pin from his jacket like a secret anchor in my pocket. Years later, the village had taught me small skills that keep a person human. Stretching coins, greeting the sun, saving face when the pot is empty. My grandmother Rose was the center of that world, all calloused hands and steady voice, the kind of woman who could make a room safer just by breathing in it. One afternoon, she crumpled at our doorstep, not a stumble, a collapse. We rushed to the clinic and the doctor said it with a voice that tried to be gentle and ended up being heavy. "She needs surgery. It will cost 1 million. 1 million might as well be 1 billion when your wallet clinks and your shoes are thin." I sat on a wooden bench outside and counted what I had, which wasn't even enough for good medicine. There was only one call left to make, and it tasted like rust. My father. After my mother died, he found a new life and sent me to the village like I was an extra chair he didn't need. I swore I wouldn't call. I called. He answered smooth as a fresh suit. 1 million. That's nothing. Come to the city. I'll give it to you myself. Do you think that's fair? To make a daughter beg for what a father should offer freely. I left before dawn, threw a handful of clothes in a bag, hugged Grandma, like I could somehow hold her in place while I was gone, and took the bus to the station. The train car to the city was a stew of perfume oil and 100 private hopes. People whispered, which is normal, but these whispers felt like they had teeth. "Don Harry," someone said low, like a secret, "he's here. The man who owns half the city." The name slid around the carriage like smoke. I didn't know who he was, and honestly, that ignorance felt like protection. Then the end door slammed open, and a crew of men moved down the aisle like a storm, faces, hard eyes scanning. "We're looking for Don Harry. Seen him?" No one answered. One pointed at me. You know him." I shook my head. "I don't even know who that is." He smirked. "You will. Everybody learns." When they passed on, air came back and people pretended to read to sleep, to be anywhere else. That's when I saw him, pressed against the rear door sleeve, soaked jaw, set the kind of posture that says, "I don't break even while you're breaking." A lot of folks look away when trouble puts on blood, and I don't blame them. But I thought of the boy who took the cane and of Grandma on that clinic bed, and my feet decided for me. I knelt, tore my scarf, wrapped his arm tight, cleaned what I could with water from my bottle. Hold still, I whispered the way you speak to a skittish horse or a scared child. He watched me with something I hadn't seen in a powerful man before, surprise and a little relief. Then he gripped my wrist. "I like you," he said, voice low, steady like he meant it. "Marry me." I laughed because how do you answer that on public transit? "Marry you? You don't even know me." "I know enough," he said. Panic grabbed the first rumor it could reach and shoved it in my mouth. "I'm married already. To Don Harry Wilson." Pattern interrupt. Screeching breaks. Doors snap open. Men in suits flood in yelling, "Boss! Harry!" And that's when my stomach dropped. The stranger I'd bandaged, the sudden fiancé I hadn't asked for, was the devil everyone whispered about. I ripped free, ran off the train, pushed through the crowd, sprinted until the city turned to blur. My father's house gleamed like it had something to prove. Glass everywhere. Marble floors that made your steps sound expensive laughter with knives tucked inside it. My stepmother drifted down the stairs in silk and judgment. "The little village girl returns," she said, and Bianca, my stepsister, looked me up and down like she'd never seen a mop do taxes before. My father stepped out of his study, all crisp lines and empty warmth. "You came. Good. The money I asked." "Soon," he said with that smile people use when they're selling time. "Stay a few days while I arrange it." That night, through a thin wall that might as well have been paper, I heard the plan. "The debt is growing," my stepmother hissed. "We can use her. Someone young, marriageable, a payment the creditors will accept." My father's voice came back like a bad echo. "Arrange it." Morning, I stood across the table from him and kept my voice low because it was shaking, and I didn't want to give him that. "I know what you're doing. I won't be sold. If you won't help now, I'm gone." He snapped his fingers, and security appeared like they'd been hiding behind the curtains for a cue. "Take her out. She'll crawl back." They dragged me to the gate and shut it like a jaw. No money, no bed, a city that likes its meat tender. I spotted a paper sign near a hotel, dripping chandeliers. "Cleaners wanted." I went in, walked out with a broom and a uniform. The supervisor, a woman with jealousy stuck in her teeth, made a public sport of scolding me. "Pretty doesn't mop floors, sweetheart. You're a rag with feet." And then he walked in. A wall of suited men cut through the lobby, and behind them came the stranger from the train. Taller than the rumor, quieter than the fear. He didn't shout. "Respect my wife," he said, and the air turned heavy. I shook my head, heart sprinting. "I'm not your wife. I don't belong to you." He nodded like he'd heard me and filed it. Upstairs, he pressed a phone and a card into my palm. "For safety." I tried to push them back. "I don't want your charity. Keep them, Olivia." He knew my name. It landed like a stone and a blanket at the same time. That night on the walk back to the tiny staff room, single bulb, narrow bed, a window that looked like it gave up years ago, a voice slid out of the dark under a streetlight. "Olivia, it's me. Henry Wilson, from school. Do you remember?" My heart made that stupid, hopeful leap hearts make when they think they're being given back what they lost. I ran to him, hugged him, felt a piece of my younger self unclench. We talked under the glow like two people trying to stitch 10 years with one conversation. He asked about Grandma, the village my job. I asked where he'd been, trying to become someone he said. He walked me to my door and asked if he could see me again. I said I needed time. He smiled. Take all the time you need. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. A note slid under my door the next day. A dinner invitation in neat handwriting that looked like manners. I wore my simple dress, tied my scarf, and told myself this was a good thing, a healing thing. The restaurant filled with glass and music. At the corner table sat 3 men whose smiles didn't touch their eyes. Miss Robinson, please sit. Where's Henry? I asked, and they traded smirks like cards. Do you know who we are? We're the Williams family. And you are very important to Don Harry. My stomach flipped. They slid a drink toward me, watched too closely as my fingers touched the glass. Once you drink, you belong to us, one said, soft and ugly. We'll use you to bring him down. I pushed the glass away, but a hand clamped my wrist, another tilted the rim. Then the doors burst open, and Cold came in on legs. He walked in like the answer to a question you don't ask in public. His men fanned out. The Williams crew froze mid-smirk. Get your hands off her, he said, and the room followed orders. He made them sign papers that cut every line they had to me. Then he looked at my cheeks, too warm, my hands too shaky, and cursed under his breath. They drugged her. He took me to his suite and laid me on a couch like I was made of glass. I reached for him and that heat fog rushed needy, not myself. Kiss me. I want you. Please. He went still, eyes a war zone, then stepped back and called the doctor. Not like this, Olivia. You'll regret it when you wake. That was the first time I saw power refuse itself. By morning, the world steadied. He sat across from me, slid a folder across the table. Read. Inside. Screenshots, bank slips, photos that made my ribs tighten. A video. Bianca laughing with the Henry from the streetlight, the man I'd hugged like I'd found a ghost from my past. She has always been obsessed with that boy from school, Bianca said. Send someone to play him, and she'll believe it. Use her feelings. So that was the twist. The Henry I thought I'd found was a puppet on my stepsister's string. I felt stupid, then angry, then empty. He didn't gloat. Your family's been working with the Williams clan, he said, and we suspected they'd target you, so when the invitation came, we were already watching. Anyone can come for me. I'm used to that. No one comes for you. Not while I breathe. Do you think that's fair? To draw a circle around someone and say everything outside can burn, but nothing crosses this line. The Robinsons tried one more stunt. A forced marriage to a wealthy man old enough to be my father. Candles, a long table, the smell of expensive shame. I stood up and said no, clear and loud. The doors blew open for the second time in a week, and he stepped into the room like a sentence you can't interrupt. How dare you force my wife, he said. The old man blanched. My stepmother's mouth fell open. My father stared at his hands like they might have answers. Henry guided me out, my heart running a full sprint in place. That night, the clinic called. The surgery had been arranged, the ambulance scheduled to transfer Grandma to the city hospital, the bill paid by an anonymous donor with the kind of instructions that come from money. Best doctors, no corners cut. I knew who, even though he didn't say it. He moved the storm, and he let me stand. Calm lasted exactly as long as villains let it. The ambulance got boxed in by a black van. Masked men dragged my grandmother out, fired shots in the air to freeze the driver, and vanished. A video landed on my phone with a voice like sandpaper. Come alone. No police. Tell anyone, and she dies. My first thought was to run to him. My second thought was the message. I went alone. The warehouse by the docks sat like a bad idea. Rusted doors, flickering bulbs, shadows pacing. Grandma tied to a chair, eyes wild, breath thin. "Let her go," I said, and my voice didn't shake because sometimes fear and love fight, and love wins the round. The man laughed behind his mask. "She has everything to do with this," he said. "You are Don Harry's weakness. Through you we control him. No, you don't." A ripple moved through the dark, and then the room filled with precision. Hands disarmed, knives clattered, guns turned into nothing. Orders snapped like wires. Marco, the right hand, cut Grandma free and shielded her with his body. Henry walked in last, because storms roll in after the wind. "Olivia," he said, and I folded into him and realized I had crossed a line I wasn't going to uncross. I didn't just trust him, I loved him. He didn't celebrate. He made a clean end. They traced the clinic leak, flipped the admin, put every piece of the Williams operation on paper, and delivered the whole thing to the police like a gift they didn't expect. Raids, arrests, warehouses seized, headlines changing tone. The hospital tightened policies. No transfer without escort. No patient info without clearance. Power meeting responsibility. It can happen. Who knew? When Grandma finally slept safe in a city ward that didn't smell like fear, he came with fruit and quiet and a laugh that caught me off guard when she told him if he ever made me cry, she'd come back and haunt him. On the way out, he saw the metal glint in my purse. "What's that?" he asked, and I pulled out the crest pin from the school jacket, scratched, familiar, warm from living in my hand too long. "It belonged to my first love," I said. "The boy who tied his jacket around me when everything went wrong." His breath caught the way a note catches when a string breaks. "That boy was me," he said, voice small in a way I hadn't heard. My family moved me the next week. I carried that moment with me. The two halves clicked. The shy boy and the feared man were the same person. I stepped in and let that truth settle where it wanted. Life tried one more crash. A black SUV struck our car on the way to what was supposed to be our first normal date. Glass carved his arm. Orders boss, Marco, growled, and every muscle in the car wanted payback. He looked at the attackers slipping away and shook his head. "No killings. Let the police handle it." I pressed my scarf to his wound and said what I'd said the first day. "Stay still. You'll be fine." He huffed a laugh that felt like it came from a younger place. "Only with you," he said. He wrote a new code. No families, no trafficking, no leaks. Anyone under his name who crossed those lines was out, no discussion. Money moved into schools housing tech. Boring, stubborn pillars that keep a city standing when the storm rolls through. People whispered that Don Harry had softened. Others said he'd learned a smarter game. Maybe both were true. Maybe that's the only way you change and survive. Meanwhile, the Robinson empire sagged and split. Creditors called, partners ran, the house echoed with blame. My father called me, voice low, for the first time in my life. "Ask him to help us, please." I listened. Then I told him what I should have been able to say years ago. "You were ready to sell me. You let Grandma almost die. You taught me my place, and it wasn't in your house. You made your choice. Live with it." I hung up. Sometimes mercy is a blanket. Sometimes it's a locked gate. At the beach at dusk with salt in the air, and that flat calm that only comes after storms, he stopped, took out a small velvet box, and said it plain. "No titles. Just me. Will you let me protect you and listen when you say no?" I laughed and cried in the same breath. Yes, but you'll learn to have me as your boss too, Don. He smiled in a way that made both names, Henry and Harry, look like parts of one face. 2 weeks later, under lanterns and roses, I walked toward him in a dress that felt like a promise. Grandma clapped like she was calling down blessings. He kissed me and didn't hide his heart from the city for once. Months later, Bianca stood at our gate, with hair that had lost its fight eyes, that had finally learned something. I mocked you because I was scared, she said. Scared of becoming you. Scared of never being chosen. I could have closed the door. Instead, I told her the only path that isn't a trick. Start at the bottom, learn respect, people earn it back. Yeah, that happened. Here's where I leave you with the argument I still have with myself. Can a man who built his name on fear choose a different kind of power and deserve a second chance? Or do we owe it to the world to keep him locked inside the worst thing he's ever done? If it were you, what would you have done? Would you take his ring, his protection, his promise to change, or walk away on principle and let the person he's trying to become disappear? Tell me where you're watching from the exact scene where you felt yourself switch sides. Was it the drugged dinner he refused to touch, the warehouse rescue, the hospital pin, or the no-killings order? Do you believe redemption scales up to men like him, or is that a luxury for the harmless? Drop your take in the comments. Argue with me, challenge me, tell me a time mercy and power collided in your life. And if this story hit you anywhere tender, share it with a friend who needs to hear that sometimes the hand that saves you is the same hand that once learned to make fists. And yes, sometimes we get to decide what that hand is allowed to be next.